Welcome to Part 2. Before there was a theory of investing, there were just companies. People invested in companies based on the merits of those companies. On January 6, 1900, Louis Bachelier, a mathematics PhD student, had his thesis, The Theory of Speculation, approved for publication. He defended his thesis on March 29, 1900, which is now considered the birth date of mathematical finance. No one paid much attention at the time, but his thesis contained many groundbreaking ideas concerning the way asset prices change. Here is the first page of his thesis. If you don't want the French, here's the first page of an English translation. Among the groundbreaking ideas was the idea that the mathematical expectation of the speculator is zero. This isn't true in a strict sense, but it captures accurately the idea that since there is a buyer and a seller in each transaction, they can't both be right. Since both sides of a transaction are presumed to be intelligent, and there are many intelligent participants in the market, they should balance each other out over many transactions. Bachelier thought that outcomes of investment choices are random. Bachelier's thesis advisor, the great mathematician and physicist Jules-Henri Poincaré, responded with, "What is chance to the ignorant is not chance to the scientist. Chance is only the measure of our ignorance." Bachelier's largely forgotten thesis was rediscovered almost by chance in 1955 by future Nobel Prize winner Paul Samuelson. Samuelson was encouraged by Jimmy Savage to look for Bachelier's thesis. Savage, a mathematician, thought that economists would benefit from reading Bachelier. Samuelson later, in 1965, brought some of the concepts into the modern context with a now famous paper called Proof that Properly Anticipated Prices Fluctuate Randomly. Samuelson said of his own paper, "This theorem is so general that I must confess to having oscillated between regarding it as trivially obvious and almost trivially vacuous, and regarding it as remarkably sweeping. Such perhaps is the characteristic of basic results." Many investors, both then and now, believe there are cycles in stock market prices, seemingly contradicting the notion of prices fluctuating randomly. This might or might not be true, but Russian statistician Eugene Slutsky showed in 1927 that random processes can generate cyclical patterns that are indistinguishable from the cycles found in economic data. Slutsky did not show that stock market price changes are random. He showed that cycles in some economic data are indistinguishable from cycles generated from the sum of random events. This is a subtle but important distinction. Not many English-speaking economists were reading Russian-language journals at the time. However, in 1937, Slutsky's work was translated and expanded in an article titled The Summation of Random Causes as a Source of Cyclic Processes. In reference to the sum of random events, Slutsky said, and this is a mouthful, "It is almost always possible to detect, even in the multitude of individual peculiarities of the phenomena, marks of certain approximate uniformities and regularities. The eye of the observer instinctively discovers on waves of a certain order other smaller waves, so that the idea of harmonic analysis presents itself to the mind almost spontaneously." Harmonic analysis means cycles, and cycles mean Fourier series. Fourier series takes us far afield from where we want to go, so we won't go there. Here's the first page of Slutsky's 1937 paper. There were other papers at the time on the mathematics of stock price movements, but just after 1950, mathematical methods for analyzing stock price changes began to flourish, particularly after Bachelier's thesis was rediscovered. Several researchers began to publish using ideas similar to or in opposition to Bachelier, each one trying to get at the mathematical nature of stock price movements. Some of the more important papers from the 50s and 60s are The Analysis of Economic Time Series, Part 1, Prices. This first one was originally titled The Analytics of Economic Time Series, but somehow the title changed. Next is Stock Market Patterns and Financial Analysis, Methodological Suggestions. Then we have Brownian Motion in the Stock Market, followed by a revision of previous conclusions regarding stock price behavior, and Note on the correlation of first differences of averages in a random chain. Next is Some Characteristics of Changes in Common Stock Prices. Then, spectral analysis of New York Stock Exchange prices, and price movements in speculative markets, trends or random walks, and a follow-up paper, price movements in speculative markets, trends or random walks, number 2. Then we have stock prices, random versus systematic changes. Next is a test of non-randomness in stock price changes. And finally, periodic structure and the Brownian motion of stock prices. You'll be happy to know that all these titles and several others can be found in a single volume, The Random Character of Stock Market Prices, Paul Kuttner, editor, published in 1964. Unfortunately, it was out of print when I bought a used copy for about $70. It was reprinted in 2000, but as of the time of this writing, the reprint is only available used for $100. First editions are quite a bit more. There's a lot to learn from these articles. If nothing else, you can learn just how sophisticated attempts were to get at the heart of what happens in financial markets. It's not as easy as it looks. But one thing you cannot learn from these articles is how to invest. They merely discuss evidence of what kind of mathematical structure best describes stock price movements, and they don't all agree. It turns out that understanding stock price changes is slippery. Anyone who would suggest otherwise has either never worked with the data or is selling something, or perhaps is fooling themselves. This list of articles stops in 1964 for reasons that will be clear by the end of the video on the capital asset pricing model, 2 videos from now. However, very much has been published since then on the subject of the mathematics of stock price changes. In 2 of the articles listed, the term random walk is used in the title. Random walks show up often in the mathematical finance literature. Try this definition. In mathematics, a random walk is a mathematical object known as a stochastic or random process that describes a path that consists of a succession of random steps on some mathematical space, such as integers. I hope that was clear. Well, formal definitions can sometimes obscure things. As a practical matter, random walk means that percentage price changes are random and that each price change is unaffected by the price changes that came before it. Concretely, this means there are no trends or trend reversals, it's just the accumulation of noise that looks like a trend, if it's true. A popular non-mathematical book that discusses the subject, suitable for individual investors, is A Random Walk Down Wall Street by Burton Malkiel. The most recent edition was published in 2023, the 50th anniversary edition. Here is the 2007 edition from my library. To what degree stock prices follow a random walk is still debated. It seems that the weight of the evidence is against the idea, but that weight may someday shift. In any case, distinct from the book A Random Walk Down Wall Street is a book not so suitable for most individual investors called A Non-Random Walk Down Wall Street by Andrew Lowe and Craig McKinley. This book requires well-developed skill in statistics and time series to get much past the first page. Understanding mathematics is one thing, investing is another. One of the 2 foundational works on how to select investments is The Theory of Investment Value by John Burr Williams. Williams was the first to make a comprehensive case for valuing a stock based on the present value of future dividends, or more generally, the present value of future cash flows. His book relies on mathematical reasoning throughout. The other foundational work is more popular among value investors. Security Analysis by Benjamin Graham and David Dodd. Fortunately for many investors, security analysis is not as mathematically oriented as the theory of investment value. Here is the first edition published in 1934. And here is the second edition published in 1940. And here's the third edition published in 1951. Each of the first 3 editions was reprinted in 1997, 2002, and 2004 respectively. Aside from the 3 editions which have been reprinted, there is the 4th edition, published in 1962, sorry, no picture, the 5th edition, published in 1988, again, sorry, no picture, and for your viewing pleasure, here is the 6th edition, published in 2009. First editions can sell for several $1,000s. First printings of the first edition commonly list for over $20,000. Although I don't know if they actually sell for that much. Obviously, there is a lot of loyalty to the book and to the principles it promotes. People who invest using the methods described in security analysis are often called Graham-Dodd bottom-up investors. Still, although there were ideas about what stocks to invest in individually, those that met the criteria of these two books, and ideas about the mathematical structure of price movements, there was no theory of how to build a portfolio other than general advice to diversify. Diversification was a seat-of-the-pants type procedure. There was no formal method you could use to know when you have arrived. William Shakespeare is often cited as one inspiration for diversification. From The Merchant of Venice, Act 1, Scene 1. My ventures are not in one bottom trusted, nor to one place, nor is my whole estate upon the fortunes of this present year. Therefore my merchandise makes me not sad. The word bottom in the first line refers to the hold of the ship where cargo was stored. But maybe that was obvious. Those who take no inspiration from Shakespeare may find it in the Bible. Ecclesiastes 11:2. Divide your portion to 7, or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. Enter Harry Markowitz.